Greetings, students, and welcome to another fun-filled day here at Horror in the Halls.
What's up, kids? Welcome to Horror in the Halls. I'm Jenny, aka Mrs. Hill.
And I'm Bob, aka Mr. Holland.
And today is our Jenny Dreadfuls edition episode where we'll be reviewing My Soul to Keep by Tananarive Due and discussing what it means to partake in the living blood, living forever. So, Bob, what did you think?
Man, I wanted to really like this book because of their approach. The whole living blood aspect I thought was like fresh and new, and it was a really cool take on the not vampire, but like just kind of immortal, living forever kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
But man, some of these characters made me really not like it.
Yeah, they're not very likable at times. So.
Well, no, and they're not, but it speaks to the author's ability to write. I mean, they're good characters. It's well written. It's a great story. You feel for the characters you're supposed to feel for. You dislike the characters I think you were probably supposed to dislike. So from a technical standpoint, it's great. But yeah, I hated
It
some of
was
these
well
people.
written. I did too.
I hated a lot of these people. I'm like, why are you stupid? Why'd you do that?
Yeah, there was a lot of commentary out loud as I read along, so yeah,
Oh,
I
dude,
get
yeah.
it.
I felt like I was talking back to the dude reading the audiobook. What the F?
Oh, stupid. I didn't listen to the audiobook, but I did read it, and there's times I was really pissed, but anyway. So I pulled a lot of information from her actual website, which is just her name, tananarivedue.com. But she's an award-winning author. She teaches Black horror and Afrofuturism at UCLA, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I really wish I could take those courses. Actually, you can take them online, so I'll get to that in a little bit. But she was an executive producer on Shudder's groundbreaking documentary Horror Noir: A History of Black Horror, which I tried to get to this week, but unfortunately, my schedule did not allow me to do that because I was asleep by like 8, 9 this week. So
It's pretty good. I watched I started it, but didn't get a chance to finish it.
Oh, I know. And there's like Tony Todd's in it and everything. So I was like, dang it. I wanted to watch it so bad, but it's okay. As she and her husband are a collaborator or his name's Stephen Barnes, wrote A Small Town for season 2 of Jordan Peele's The Twilight Zone. She works with Jordan Peele quite a bit, actually. Because I found out that she was a contributor to the screenplay of Get Out. And I think there's an interview with them too. And I don't know where that is. I need to look for that too. But if you look on her website, there's actually a picture of them talking about the Get Out script, which I thought was really cool. But anyways, she co-hosts a podcast called Life Writing, Write for Your Life. I think that's also with her husband. And they also co-wrote an upcoming horror graphic novel called The Keeper, and it's illustrated by Marco Finnegan. Well, that sounds really cool. I might be checking that out. She's a leading Black voice in fiction. She's won an American Book Award, an NAACP Image Award, and a British Fantasy Award.
Okay.
And a lot of her writing has included anthologies. Her books include Ghost Summer Stories, My Soul to Keep, The Good House, which I'm excited to read. And it says that she and her late mother, civil rights activist Patricia Stevens Due, co-authored Freedom in the Family, a mother-daughter memoir of the fight for civil rights, which I thought was really cool. And they live with their son, her and her husband live with their son, Jason. Let's see. She does teach online courses, life writing premium, Afrofuturism, the soulmate process, and the sunken place Black horror, which was pretty interesting. I would like to do
too.
I would like to take any of them for real. They all sound really cool. So the book actually is, I looked at all the different, stars that they've accumulated, like the recommendations and reviews. But on Goodreads, they had a 4.15 out of 5 stars. Barnes and Noble was 4.5 out of 5 stars. And then on Amazon, the audiobook, since you read the audiobook, I wanted to pick that one out, but it's a 4.6 out of 5 stars. So it's pretty good. It's pretty accurate, honestly, for what the book is. And before we really get into like all the characters and the themes and stuff, I want to give a heads up that this book is the first in a 4-part series, which I was not aware of when I picked it up. Thankfully, I picked the right one. I have not read the others. According to Stephen King, it's an eerie epic, bears favorable comparisons to Interview with the Vampire, which I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And he said
Yeah.
he loved this novel.
Yeah, I can see that.
This book follows 2 characters mainly, but at times will change point of view to a minor character, all of which is intentional in the storytelling. Jessica is an investigative journalist, and DeWitt or David is an immortal that is currently married to Jessica, and it follows their story through like knowledge, pain, betrayal, and running themes of the human condition. So there's a lot to take in on this one.
Dawit is he's one of the characters that I wanted to like a lot and just could not. But
Yeah, I
before
did
I get
not
into
like
that, I
him.
just wanted to say the audiobook is actually really good. It's read or narrated by Peter Francis James, and he's like an actor. He has a really good voice though. It's got one of those like Morgan Freeman kind of like
Oh
just
yeah.
deep commanding voices, and he does a good job with the pronunciations and the some of the dialect changes and how things shift at the times, because in this book it takes place over like 500 years, right? So it jumps around a lot. So when he can go
Yes.
from like pre-colonial Muslim Africa to the American South during the time, antebellum South of slavery, and he's hitting these accents, male, female voices. It sounds really good. He's one of those readers that kind of changes his tone, he changes his inflection, and I thought he was really, really well. I wouldn't mind reading more stuff that he's actually narrated for Audible. I might look for him particularly. He did a good job.
Yeah, because there was a lot of back and forth. So if that is a hard task for you, this book will be hard to read.
Nice.
Thankfully, it was easy to catch on for me because, like I've said before, when we did the Us episode, there were times where the time skips confused me, but after a while, I got the hang of it. It was the same thing with this novel. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not really good at the time skipping usually, but she made it a lot simpler. And then there were times where she would actually put the date and like where it was, and that helped a lot. As the
The
chapters
titles,
changed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like that helped a lot. I like how she had them in parts. Like you knew what was coming, like what the section was going to be about.
Mhm.
I thought that was a cool. I like when any author puts like parts inside a book and like puts them in little sections. I like that. So a list of characters to start us off is DeWitt or David. I'm gonna refer to him as David because that's really who Jessica knows him as throughout the
Yeah.
book until like the end. And then there's Jessica. Kira's the daughter. B is Jessica's mother. Alexis is Jessica's sister. Peter Donovich is actually Jessica's best friend at her job, also an investigative journalist. Sai is their I guess their editor in chief is
Yeah,
what I kind of gathered. Mahmoud, I hope I'm saying that one
it
right.
is. It's Mahmood.
Okay. He is actually DeWitt's almost like his best friend and brother, not by blood, but like just
Yeah.
they went through a lot together. And he comes up, through memories throughout the book, but he also pops up at the end. And then Khaldun, which is the person who kind of leads the Brotherhood, for those who partook in the living blood, and we'll get to that. And then I had to add in Princess and Tea Cake because they were actual crucial
They
parts
were.
of the
I
story.
know.
The dog is Princess, and she actually dies at the beginning, but she has a purpose.
Yeah, she kinda sets off
Actually,
the whole story, really.
yeah, she does. And then there's Tea Cake, which is the cat, and that cat is super important to the story as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, do
Great
you want
characters.
to?
Yeah, I mean, they're great characters. I will say, just for continuancy, is it's Dawit. It's not DeWeet. It's just Dawit.
Okay,
It's
well,
like just
it's
really
fine.
odd spelled. Yeah, it's
I
weird.
heard. I thought I watched an interview with her, and she said it differently, but I could be wrong. So
Oh, well, I mean, I'm just going by what was read in the audiobook, so maybe he was saying it wrong, but that would be weird.
I don't
Audible's
know.
pretty on that. It's like Dawit, Mahmood, and then Khaldun, which I was like,
Okay.
okay. These characters are cool. Like, I kind of agree with you. The time jump, especially in the first couple chapters, because when you're not reading it, you don't see the tops of the title names and stuff, and it just jumped
Mhm.
while he was reading, and I was like, "What? Oh, okay." And then you kind of had to, after a while, you caught on and you understood, but it was very like at first it took a minute to kind of get that. I did like seeing the past reflected in the way she did. I really enjoyed. I will say this about the book: I really enjoy the way they became immortal. I think it's fresh. I've never seen that done before
No, I
to
haven't
that
either.
way. And maybe it's in other books I've just never read, but nothing I've read or watched in a film or heard reference to took this approach, which I thought was really interesting. By comparison to other stuff. Like I said, this book, of course, it's the first of four, and maybe the characters get better. I know the second one has won some awards and stuff. This one gets a lot of praise though, just because, like she said in an interview, it was her first full book she wrote to get like published. It sat on the shelves for a while though, because it was hard to kind of find a spot for it. But you had
Well,
like
her
Stephen
first book
King,
got rejected.
yeah,
So, like, this was her
her first
second
published book.
her second
Yeah.
book, but her first published book, yes.
But yeah, so she's talking about, she said in an interview it was wild because it just kind of took off. She had like Stephen King giving blurbs, and then it was like, and all these other authors, and she said their names, but the only one that stood out to me was Stephen King, because Stephen King.
Well, that's good though, because the fact that he could give her a step up is awesome, because I mean, she's a very big figure in black horror writing. Like,
Yeah.
she's really good. So, I mean, I can't say that I loved this book, because there was parts of it that really frustrated me, but I think it was very well written. It's like it's not my usual pick,
Yeah.
but
No, I agree. I agree.
I think it was a very well written book, and the characters were like spot on. Like, I felt like I was experiencing everything that the characters were experiencing, which is why I
Yeah.
cried at the end. Dang it. So, but
Everything that I think
anyway.
we could experience, some of those
Mhm.
challenges and emotions, I don't think like a white person can fully grasp, like especially some of like
Well, no.
the themes. But I do think the general themes, of just love, death, loss, and what comes after, all those things are things we all deal with, and she did a really good job of using her own culture and using like the past that goes along with being African American, in America, but and how that played out, So I thought that was really well. And like I said, like that flashback to the where the living blood comes from, I thought was super interesting. But then it also made me dislike David's character even more, because then I was like, how are you so smart yet so ignorant at the same time? And it was really aggravating to me,
Yeah.
you know.
There was a lot about David I did not like, so, and I've already told you some
Do
of that, so.
Did you want to just get into what the living blood is and talk about it, or did you want to talk about some stuff first before we went that way?
No, that's fine. So I want to start off by talking about what the book started off like
Okay.
before I go into the living blood, because I think it's important to note like all the mistakes he makes throughout the whole thing. Even though he's like this very knowledgeable person, he makes terrible decisions.
Yeah,
But
all the time.
it starts off with like this. I guess it was like, I don't know. It wasn't like a nursing home. It was more like or maybe it was.
Yeah, it's
I
like a
thought it was
nursing
more like
home.
a hospital, but it was like assisted living, and
Yeah, it was like a senior
she was
living facility.
yeah. So at the very beginning, it talks about this little old lady who is pretty much on her deathbed, and this man walks in, and she recognizes him, and they have this conversation. She was like, "I knew you would come for me," and like it was like her looking at him, or him looking at her, thinking about like how she used to look when she was younger, and like how withered away she was, and like
Mhm.
how he was disgusted by the way she looked, because it was like it was a waste of life or whatever. And then he's getting ready to leave, and she says, "Goodbye, daddy." And I'm like, "What?" And then it doesn't explicitly tell you, but at the time, but like he's picking up a pillow so that he could smother her. And then it comes up later,
Yeah.
which comes full circle, because his wife Jessica is an investigative journalist for the paper, the local paper. So, and she's researching like, nursing homes and assisted living homes that where the people are being like abused and neglected. So like that one was a big story that popped up. And anyway, so like that was like the first of many mistakes that he makes. So, but like I said, it jumps around a lot at the beginning. So like you're going back and forth between like not only his mistakes, but, like, just his past in general, just so you get a backstory on him, and I don't know if it was to make you feel more empathy for him or what, like, what the intention was behind that. Because at times I did feel very sorry for him because I'm like, he's experiencing all these things and they're horrible things, but at the same time, he is not a nice person. So
Well, no, like, and he talks about like that intro, and that was what I kind of was hooked at first because you really get not necessarily interview with the vampire, but vampire vibes, right? Like a Dracula kind of
mhm.
vibe because you're like, hold up. And it's because they kind of describe in a way that he's not an elderly man. He's young, and but you have this frail, dying woman who's like, "Oh, hey, daddy, I knew you'd come." Da, da, da. And he goes in about his other son and, all these things, but he's taking it from, like you said, like almost a disgusted standpoint and not a place of caring.
No.
You
Like,
know what I
the whole
mean?
time he's, like, thinking about it, he's thinking about what she used to look like
Yeah.
and how, like, he thought he was just doing her a service by putting her out of her misery. And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. No, he's kind of a
Uh,
terrible person.
he is a there's no kind of, he is a
Yeah.
terrible person.
Interesting. In the interview, she said that she was actually a reporter for the Miami Herald in her
Mhm.
20s when she wrote this book. So I
Yeah.
think Jessica is kind of based on her. And she said some stuff like she was having issues with dating and men lying with her. And then, like, that led her to, like, how well do you really know someone? And then she came to the realization that it really wasn't them lying to her, that she was lying to herself about who they were. So I think
Yeah.
Jessica's character came from her own growth and realizations of who she was and about her own life, which I think is kind of cool, which kind of lend to that character.
Yeah, because she mentions I watched an interview too, and it was probably almost the same one or, like, maybe a part of one, but, like, she was saying that she tried to put herself in the shoes of somebody who actually found Mr. Perfect, what he looked like, but then realizing that you've been living a lie this whole time
Yeah.
and what that would feel like, and which sucks because, he seems perfect on the outside. That's why Peter, her best friend at work, would always call him Mr. Perfect, and that was kind of
Hmm.
their inside joke. But which really makes me sad about Peter. Like, at first I was like, "Gosh, why is Peter so, like the way he is?" I don't know.
Yeah.
But it just turned out that he was just her friend, you know? But to to jump forward a little bit, you were talking about the living blood and how that worked out. So, like, Khaldun was this, I don't even know what they called him. It wasn't like a prophet, it was something else, wasn't it? I don't,
Yeah.
or
Something
I
more
can't remember.
related to, I think, Islam, but I can't remember the name either.
So, he had a following, and he was like he brought all these people, and not, I don't wanna say people. He brought all these men to, which made sense for what it is, because women were I don't want to offend anyone, but, like, women are not, high on the totem pole.
Well,
So,
who you going to offend? It's a historical accuracy. Also, they're still not high on the totem pole in a lot of
well, I know, but,
Muslim
like,
religions.
I don't know. I just don't wanna offend anybody with the religious aspect, because I mean, it's true, but, like, so he invites all these men and he's like telling them, like, okay, so pretty much he has the blood of Christ running through his veins because they took from Jesus on the cross his blood as it was draining from him. And they partook in that. And so they call it the living blood because it was Christ's blood that was running through. And he kills himself basically in front of everyone. But, like, before he does that, he's like, "Just know if you sit and you wait, you will see a miracle." And so DeWitt and Mahmoud were really close at the time, and they sat and waited because they trusted him. And then in the morning, he woke up,
Yeah.
and they were like, "This is a miracle." Like, they almost kind of worshipped him as a god almost. And then he was like, "I can give you this, but if I do, there's things that you have to understand about, like, you know, how you have to live your life after this." He goes, "And we seek knowledge and we seek, just to live in, almost like live in meditation, almost like monks."
Yeah.
I would call them more like monks almost. So DeWitt and Mama decide, okay, well, we're gonna do this. So, like, I think he poisons them is what he does. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I think so.
And then he gives them this blood, but in doing so, he has to complete this ritual where he says these lines. But little does he know that DeWitt actually hears him performing the ritual and knows the lines. So like DeWitt always lives with that knowledge, whereas the others don't know what it is, which is going to affect the trajectory of the book. The fact that he remembered that. So I don't know. I just think it's funny because when you got to the point where you're listening and you found out that like so this blood cures people and they will not use it to help people that's where you were like, I don't want to read this book anymore. I'm
No, because it was
just
stupid.
like
Well, like, I guess from my take on it, like, that's what I thought was so interesting. Like, I've never seen a
Mhm.
book that's like, we took blood from Christ. So, like, in this story, like, Khaldun is telling them how he got this blood. That there were people at the time of Christ's crucifixion who took, like, essentially a bladder, like a wine bladder, like old school, like sheep bladder for wine, of his
Yeah.
blood. And then after Christ was resurrected, the blood was warm again, right? So that's
Mhm.
how they get their immortality. He drank of that blood, he became immortal. And I think what's interesting is that this time period, like Mahmud and Dawit were both like Muslims at the time, like warriors, right? Like he kind of has his past where he talk about their warriors and they're like Dawit was married to Mahmud's sister, but she passed. So they have that connection. So they are like brothers legitimately because in that kind of culture, they once you marry into the family, you're your family. So he refers to him as his brother in that early time. But I thought was interesting is that they still don't like later on he becomes like an atheist. But I'm like, you are this old and you all live this long, right? From the blood of the Christian God, essentially. Yet none of you believe that of you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
are literally the product of a supernatural ability from someone that is considered Christ, but you still don't believe that that person was who he said he was. It's very odd to me. Like I thought that was kind of strange. Like it's one of those things like you hear in a lot of other stories about faith versus knowing, right? They talk about in
Yeah.
like Constantine or like Supernatural and all those other shows where it's like, well, you don't have faith because you know, right? Which I'm
Mhm.
not expecting Dawit or anybody else to have faith, but to still like being like, nah, I'm an atheist, I don't believe. Bro, you're like 500 years old because of the blood of Christ. Like, that was just a stupid arc for his character. I thought it didn't make any sense. Like, why is this here? You know what I mean? Like, it was meh. To me, it was silly. I'm not saying he should be like a devout Christian or nothing, but like whenever there was that whole section when, early on, whenever they're going to church and he's like so against it and will only go when she forces him and stuff. I'm like, what? You should be like the most understanding because his blood is in your veins.
Yeah. And he kind of puts it down occasionally, like not
Yeah.
like out not like super like disrespectful, but like I don't know, he just puts it down to where like he's like I'm not going to go and you can go.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, but
But I'm
what?
not going to partake in that
And that was my thing.
information.
Like,
So,
I don't care. Like the whole him being an atheist thing, or even if he was a Muslim, it wouldn't matter. But to act like it's not like a thing, like it was just added in there for no reason. I thought, like, why? You literally have the blood of the living Christ in your body. Like, and they
I'm not really sure.
it
I
doesn't
don't
make any
wanna say that it
sense.
wasn't intentional. I think it was intentional because everything she did in this
Yeah,
book was intentional, and it might come up later of why
maybe.
he made that turn because, to be quite honest, he experienced something that even Mahmud and Khaldun had never experienced. He experienced slavery and, the civil rights era, like, all
Yeah, but
that
that has
stuff
no
was
bearing on God.
he
And
but
not
he's
that a
he
Christian God is the one you believe in, but like to
I
not
that's
believe in
not really what I
Jesus is
mean.
silly.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, when you've seen that those things, and that's when you start to question, "Why is God doing this?"
Yeah, but
I
that's where
feel
I get
like
back to the
that is
faith.
probably where
You would question your faith in why God does this. I'm not saying he has to have faith, but to act like it's silly to believe or to not believe when you actually know is stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying he should
was
have faith or even be a Christian because that, why? And I get it. That's not where you come from. But to be like, to be an atheist, to say that you don't believe in God when the blood of God is in your veins and you literally can heal people with your blood is silly. But that's
I'm
another
just
thing. It's
curious
not about the book.
I'm just curious to find out if it comes up later in, like,
Or
other
maybe.
books because
It'll
it
probably be
has to be
different.
for a purpose.
Yeah, because of how this book ends, it might be different. Because now that you have this super Christian lady healing the world.
So, just to kinda switch over to Jessica a little bit, Jessica like I mentioned, has become this investigative journalist, and she takes her job really seriously.
Hmm.
She has goals of, like, writing a book, and Peter believes in her work, which I always appreciated about his character. Like, he pushed her to achieve goals, and he knew the amount of time that it would take. Whereas David was very opposed to it because he just wanted her to spend all her time with him and Kira, which was their daughter. And for the longest time, it drove me nuts. Like, I was like, I would want Johnny to be very, supportive of me if I wanted to sit and write and like him take care of other things. Like, there's going to be times where I can't always be with you to do things. Like, I just want
Yeah.
to sit and do things that I know is going to improve myself and that I want, things I want to do and to be successful. So like I got aggravated with David from the get-go for that reason. But which you find, I mean, obviously like from the beginning like who he actually is. Like after he starts talking about like all the things that like he was interested in. And like I think the turning point for me when I started to really figure out that he was actually like, but because I read the back of the book, but like if I without reading the back of the book, like you don't really truly realize who he is until like he goes on a date with her, and he talks about like how like distant he is with people, and he keeps them at a arm's length, and he's very like old school with everything. He
Yeah.
listens to old music, he watches old movies. He's kind of stuck in a certain era,
Yeah.
basically. So I don't know. I didn't like him from the beginning, and I think that was the start of me not liking him was that. And then I progressively started to hate him when he started killing people that were important to her. And then was like, I shouldn't have done that. No,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I don't
Though,
understand.
I sort of like, I have a little bit of sympathy for him as a character. I don't necessarily like him, but when you really break down who he is and the purpose of the flashbacks, so you get this person who is a dedicated warrior who essentially sells his soul and all his beliefs to this man who is like a living kind of prophet. Even his power grows over the time. He gives up who he is, right? And then he comes to America to like get away because they kind of make it imply that he encourages them to go out into the world just to learn because knowledge is kind of their whole purpose, right? To
Yeah.
learn, grow, get these whatever, bring it back to the brotherhood. But then he falls in love during American slavery with Adele, but then also loses her. So I feel like that was the jumping period point, for who he is with Jessica, right? So, because in the book, there's 3 periods adjusted or talked about, 4 periods rather. So you have like essentially it's like Ethiopian city, it's like Lalabella back in the day, like Crusades time, and they talk about him being a crusader and all this jazz. And then it cuts to the American South during slavery, right? And it's how we meet Adele. They get lynched because he's running away because he's an affluent man who shouldn't have been a slave anyway, but it's American South and it was a horrible time. But then it cuts to like the 20s, or was it the 40s? One of the two, probably.
It was the 20s, I
It was 20s
believe.
when he was a jazz musician and he gets married again. But I think my thought on it is this: he truly loved Adele, and lost her, and he did not get over that. Unlike us, like people who people grieve themselves to death when they really love someone. This is a man who he kind of alludes that he wanted to grieve himself to death and was unable to. He can't. So how do you mourn? Some people don't ever get over their lost loved one, and this person can't even get away from it with the escape of death. He has it forever. So I think he was playing a role in trying to get over it when he married Rosaline's mom and had those kids, but he was not. So he was more, I can't connect with you. But then cut to Jessica because in some of those flashbacks, he's very cold to the children. He's very like distant from the
Yeah, he is.
wife. He just cared about music, which is very much in kin with the Brotherhood's ideals because he had been back with them after the loss of Adele, right? And Jessica is more like his feelings for Adele. Like he's had time, actual time. Just think about it. Like if you lost your spouse now, we're only going to live, even if they died in our 40s, we may live what, 20, 30 more years before we also die, right? Unless it's a mourning situation. So that ends for us. It never ended for him. So he took essentially like a long time, almost
Well, he
almost
does
a
say
hundred
at the end of
years.
the book that he didn't even realize that he loved Adele until after she died. Like he did not feel anything. He didn't realize how he felt for her until after her death and watching her
Yeah,
die.
yeah. I mean, that was
So
probably
like,
really life changing.
yeah, it was, but at the same time, like he was truly in love with Jessica.
Yeah,
And I get that part, but at the same time, he never really truly realized how to separate the fact that she was mortal from him being immortal. And to me, that's where it broke down. Like, cuz I don't you should understand that she is living a life to the fullest because her life is shorter than yours. And you are neglecting her in a way that's like to let her be herself. And that I didn't like.
See, I
Cuz
felt. Sorry, go ahead.
I just I don't I know you don't agree with me, but I feel wholeheartedly that he was a very abusive person
I don't
because of
disagree, but
he was very possessive of her time. He was not supportive whatsoever, and he was super selfish like through
mhm.
the whole book. I feel like the only one he truly treated right was Kira until the end.
Yeah.
But
I mean, but he was trying to treat her right. He didn't mean to do that.
no,
I
he
think the
didn't,
reason
but
why
it backfired.
I I don't agree wholeheartedly is because of I think it's kind of the opposite. I think that he knows that she's mortal and he had to experience loss on a level that he was not prepared for with Adele, and he does not want to do that again because his time with Adele was very short. And like you said, he didn't realize how strongly he felt about her till she was gone. So I think with Jessica, he realized it early and wanted to hold on to that so hard. You know what I mean? If you put yourself in a place where like if you lose your first love, like someone that you love like no other, and then you're like, you spend nearly 100 years at this point alone, not thinking you're ever going to have that again, and then you find that again, you're not going to want to let it go at all. So I think while he was definitely possessive and definitely abusive in that way, I don't think it was from a place of not caring about her mortality. I think it was a place of fearing her mortality.
I didn't say he was scared of her mortality. I'm just he didn't learn he never learned his lesson about what type of like he is immortal. Your life is never ending,
Yeah.
but the people that you choose to surround yourself with are mortal. You cannot expect them to understand your situation, and you can't expect to understand theirs. So I don't. That's the breakdown for me with David. That's why I don't like his character because I'm like he has all this knowledge, but he neglects to see that. Like he talks about how they just want to sit and around and they don't want to go get up and do things and blah blah blah. But I'm like that's all they know because that's their mortality says that
Yeah.
But you see it differently because you have seen so much, whereas they have not. So I don't know. That was the breakdown for me. That's why I'm not totally. I can't empathize with him as much because I feel like he should be knowledgeable enough to know that he should have allowed her that. And at one point, he does end up mentioning, he's like, I should have just let her do it. And Peter was like, so getting to that, he was very jealous of Peter
Oh
because
yeah.
he thought Peter was going to figure out that he murdered his daughter or that he was involved in that murder. But he was also I think it was more so he was just jealous because he thought Peter was going to take Jessica from him. But essentially Peter was gay. Peter does
Yep.
not care about her that way. He cared about her as a friend and a colleague. And so David made a very rash decision and like murders him horribly.
Yeah, he does.
So he hides like in his back seat and freaking slits his throat with a linoleum knife or whatever they
Yeah.
called it,
Yeah, that's what
which
it is. Those weird
sounds
little
her
haggard curved blades.
yeah, horrible. And it's devastating to her because it's literally her best friend.
Yeah. Her only friend, really, based on how
And
she talks.
yeah, because she's very family oriented. She loves being with her mom and her sister, which I very much, relate to because I love being around my mom and my sister. So I was really heartbroken for her at that time. Like she wrote that whole section so well. Because I really felt just icky with her. Like it was just depressing. So after that, it's kind of like where David starts to unravel.
Mm.
Like this was like the icing on the cake. Like he shouldn't have done that. If he hadn't have done that, I think things would have been a little easier for him, but instead it just spiraled out of control. So like he starts like, experimenting in his shed with like lizards and stuff and he to see cuz he doesn't want to let his family go. He's like,
No.
they're going to be immortal. They're going to be immortal with me.
Yeah, he's scared to death of losing him.
Yeah. Which that part I do understand. But I also am like, you should give people a choice whether or not they want to live forever.
Yeah. I think it all boils down
Um,
to he's just selfish. Like, but I think
yes.
Khaldun
He's very selfish.
brought them up, or fostered that selfishness in them. Their whole brotherhood is selfish. It
Yeah,
goes back to why I don't
it
like this
is.
book. Like, you have a whole group of people in what is really considered one of the most like impoverished, sickly like areas of the world, and they set and hoard knowledge and keep all of it from the world. Like, you get later on when he's
Yeah.
doing all this testing and she gives her the blood to her sister, and you find that it can like cure all these diseases, right? And at two different times in the book, she alludes to they can lose almost all of their blood and be fine. Because like when David tells her that he is immortal, or when Khaldun shows Dawit and Mahmud and the other group, he essentially guts himself and bleeds out.
Mm-hmm.
But it all replenishes and he's fine. So you could be healing the world. But I think the whole sect as a whole is so selfish to want to keep this to themselves and hoard knowledge and do this that they don't want to share. And I think that's his eventual downfall. It's just he was brought up to be not brought up, but kind of like trained by Khaldun to be extremely selfish and only think of the brotherhood, not think of anyone outside, which seems to be counter to his personality a little bit. And I think that's why he gets so entangled with what they considered like mortal affairs, is that he is not probably inherently selfish. He has become that way.
Yeah, I just all of them drive me nuts.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But there's a couple of scenes that I found were very I think it was very impactful for the novel in general. So like I just want to talk about those before we start like running out of time. But like David decides he's going to explain everything to Kira. So he plans this weekend getaway without Kira and takes Jessica to this like private island in the Everglades, and she's thinking it's going to be this nice relaxing getaway with her husband and all this, and they get there and his whole intention is to freaking kill himself with her present so that he could see so she could see the miracle like he
Yeah.
did with Khaldun. And that was the worst the worst scene ever. I was so distraught while reading it. I was like, I would be a basket case if I walked into a bathroom and saw Johnny with like all of his insides spilling out. Because and that's how
Yeah.
she felt. And she was like she got to the point where she even got sick, like physically sick, and was sick for a few days after they got back with like a fever and stuff because he had stressed her out so bad. And she just spent her entire weekend sobbing because she thought her husband was dead. He was like, no, he goes, I told you it would be fine in the morning. Didn't I tell you it would be fine in the morning? Like, what part of that? But he didn't explain everything before he
No.
did it.
And it's such a drastic
And
way to
so
kill yourself too.
I know. And I was like, what are you doing? It was so terrible. But it was so well written that I just felt so sad for her. I was like, and I made notes in the book. I was like, I don't know. I would be a complete basket case, just like she was. Like I couldn't imagine any of that. So that was one. So she has one, actually she's got two chapters throughout the whole book that are in Kira's point of view, which I loved those two chapters. I thought those were the most well-written chapters in the entire book. And the only reason why is because she played on that childish innocence so well.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved Kira, which is why I cried so hard. So the first scene, the first chapter that Kira pops up, she implies that she can see ghosts. And they have this cave that's like outside their house in the backyard, where even Jessica at times has mentioned that she felt her dad was there, which is Kira's grandpa. And
Mm-hmm.
like Kira actually sees the grandpa. And she's said things to Kira or to Jessica that Kira shouldn't know about her dad. And it's because she can see him and talk to him. But he tells her this little story about a dragon and this little boy named Lynn. And he's like, one day, his parents are wizards, but those wizards can't go up in the sky and be in the sky. But when it comes time for Lynn, there's gonna be a dragon, and that dragon, he's gonna become friends with that dragon, and that dragon's gonna fly him off into the sky where the wizards can't go. But that's okay because Lynn will always love his parents, and and the dragon and him will always be really good friends. And I was like, that's a really sad story, Grandpa, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get back to the other Kira one in a minute, but like Mahmoud starts like freaking following him around and like like putting
Yeah.
the cameras and like
They're
bugs in their
mysterious.
house and stuff. I know, right? So Jessica starts finally figuring out who David is specifically and who all he's killed. And she's nervous and she's like, I'm going to take my child and run. And so she does that. And Mahmoud's like following her this whole time, right? And which I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time I was reading this whole section. And I was like, oh my God, she's going to die. And so is Kira. And it's going to be a big old mess. And then David's going to be distraught. It's going to be a hot mess. So, David finally gets to them in time before Mahmoud like shoots both of them. And he takes them to this remote motel somewhere. And he's like, I'm going to perform this ritual in his brain. He doesn't tell them that. And because I neglected to say that he performed it on Tea Cake, the cat, and he survived it. So he's like, if I can save Tea Cake and give him immortality, I can do the same for my wife and my child. But the sad part is Jessica makes it. Kira does not. And that is where I put the book down and I texted you and I said, I can't read nothing else tonight because I started crying. So I was like, I'm done. I don't want to read anything else. It like ruined my night. Like that's how I felt. I
It
was
would
like,
be.
why did
She's a
I?
sweet girl. Like the way they always describe her, she's just a sweet child
Yes,
who
and she
loves
was
her
so
daddy so
smart
much.
and yes. He called her Duchess, and I was like, "You know what? You have done it again." I know he did not mean this. And I know wholeheartedly he's gonna always have to live with the fact that he crushed her windpipe and killed
Mm.
her. But the law enforcement, came in and like ruined his plans. And so that brings me to the next chapter that's in Kira's point of view. So like her grandpa in the first chapter was like with her was telling her, he's like, you're gonna leave unexpectedly and in a hurry, but you'll be back. And I'm thinking, okay,
Yeah.
I guess her and Jessica do make their way back to the house or whatever. I wasn't expecting her to just make it back and her be at the cave with her grandpa because she's dead.
Yeah.
I was like, that is wretched. And I think the part that really got me was when her grandpa was like, you remember the story of Lynn? That's actually about you. And she was like, and he was talking about the wizards will never be able to come up into the clouds with you. So, because your mom and dad are immortal and they're not ever going to be able to be there with you. And I'm like, well, where's the dragon? And she looks over and she thinks she sees a dragon, but it's Princess is the dog from the very beginning. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, the dragon is the dog. And I was like, and so she gets on its back and like it shows her just kind of going off, like I guess to heaven at the end. And I was like, I just cried. I cried like a baby. I was like, I looked at Johnny and said, this is terrible. And he was like, are you crying? Yes, I'm crying. This is terrible. I was so attached to her. She was my favorite character.
It's a good ending for her, though, if you think about it. Like, she didn't have to endure the
Yes,
nonsense of her mom and dad forever.
for
I
real.
mean, it's terrible that she
Golly.
died, but like, does she get
Yes.
to go to heaven and she has that rap? Because she was real sad about Princess. Like, she was real distraught at the beginning, and her dad paints that mural on her wall of the dog flying in
Yeah.
heaven because she'd made that painting. It's cool that she wrapped it up like that because she harkens back to the very beginning because she painted that kind of child's painting of Princess flying like a big
Yeah,
dragon.
I forgot
Because,
about that. Yeah, she
yeah,
did.
so that was kind of a cool, like, not a cool, but kind of a cool wrap up. And the wizards thing, like I was confused by that, but then the more I think about it, I think it's just how to explain her mom and dad's situation to a child.
Yeah.
Like they're wizards, they're magic, because kids understand magic inherently. I think, to an extent, you say things are magic. That's always, oh wow, and kids think everything is magic and
Yeah.
wonderful and amazing. So that's it's terrible and sad. But again, it almost makes you feel sorry for Dawit. Like it's his fault, but like because I think he loves Jessica, but like you said, the way he is with Kira, it almost the way it's written. And as a father, I think he has that like
No, he treats
that
her the
yeah,
best.
that's what I'm saying.
That's
Like
the
that
he
unconditional love for her. He will
Yes, it was
never get
very
over the loss
unconditional.
of Kira, like ever.
No.
That's why at the end he retreats back to the compound hidden in Africa because he's essentially done the thing that he was fighting so hard that he basically sacrificed his whole belief system for to give this
Mhm.
to his wife and daughter. But I think like why he loves and wants to possess Jessica, he like adores Kira and just wants to be with his kid all the time. Even when they were like the
Yeah,
flashbacks
that's
where he was mean to Rosaline, he's all like, "Oh yeah, Duchess, this is my clarinet." Da da da. And he's just like he's trying to impart knowledge to her versus just get away from me. Which I think is
well,
cool. than
And
sad.
what's important at the end with David is he was willing to let Jessica go. And he told her, he's like, they're going to come after you because you have all this knowledge. He said, but I'm taking Kira with me. She will be with me forever. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't even care at that point. He was like, I love you, but she's coming with me, regardless of if you want me to take her or not. So, like, to me, that showed that he cared for her more than he did anyone else. Like, he loves Jessica and cares about her, but there's a different love there with Kira.
Well, it's different with everybody. I think with everybody's kids, man.
Y-
Like
yeah.
it's what I try to explain to my children. When I got remarried, like my love for my wife is equal, but not the same. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
no.
because in all
Yeah.
relationships, like the person can leave, you grow apart, things happen. I can't think of a single thing ever that would make me not love my children. Like once you form that bond with your children, I don't have a single thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unconditional, so I get that from from a father standpoint. I understand that for sure. And I almost makes you want to read the other books just to see how she deals with Dawit's character with the loss of Kira later on. Because I kind of read a synopsis for the next book, so like I know what happens. Not what happens, but I know kind of like some of the story. But I'm not sure if that would replace Kira to him or what. So I'd be interested to find out.
Yeah, so at the end of the story, Khaldun kind of lets them go because he has this like dream that like not Kira, Jessica, and the infant are gonna change things. And Mahmoud was so confused. He was like, "There's no infant. That she's a little kid," and blah blah blah. And then you find out like she's pregnant. And at the very end of the story, which it was funny because when you were so mad about them not like sharing the blood to like help save people, Alex and Jessica, once Jessica's turn, she's like, well, I know you're not going to help, but I'm going to help. And so it took the women in the story to start making changes, which I love that because I feel like that spoke to me a lot. Like I mean, as being as a female or whatever. So and I liked that ending. I thought that was very fitting for who Jessica was as a character because she genuinely cares about other people. And I know Alex does. I mean, Alex was already, what is that called? I can't always forget. What was her job?
She's a
Is it a hematologist? Is
yes.
that what it's
God.
called? So she already studies blood and like tries to figure out like cures for things. And they go to Africa and they set up this clinic and they start, curing diseases for these little kids. And that was their goal. And I loved that. I loved that part of the ending. And then, David does show up at the end, but I like how he tried to impart some wisdom to her so that she doesn't get hurt in the long run. Cause she's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. But I think it was a little too early for him to impart that wisdom on her because she's still very angry with him.
Oh, I can
So
imagine. Like, I
yeah,
mean, she lost a child because of him and his
yeah.
nonsense.
And like part of her's conflicted. She's like, I still love him, and I know what he was doing was to save her, but it's still his fault because essentially they couldn't complete that ritual. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It was a mistake.
yeah, this was very much a mistake, and it didn't dawn on me until I started rethinking about like the conversation Kira had with her grandpa, and I'm like, please don't kill the girl. I'll be so upset. And I was so distraught. So, anyway, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just like I said, I thought it was well written. I thought the characters are good because I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like Dawit. So I think that's a good character. I was very interested. I'd like to know. Part of me, I wish there was like a Wikipedia page because I don't want to read the other books, but I want to know more about the Brotherhood. Again, I think the Living Blood is super interesting. I think that's kind of a cool way to be immortal.
Yeah.
And I like that, like you said, it took a woman at the end to do what they should have been doing the whole time. You know what I mean? Like from a Christian perspective, to come to the earth and like heal and do all those miracles that like are attributed to Jesus. I'm like, now you're finally having someone who's like, duh, we're gonna do what Jesus did and just heal people with our blood, which was kind of the whole blood of Christ thing. I think it's kind of cool and interesting, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, that's about all I got. Like I said, I was sad about Kira. I didn't get to fully finish the book. Like I said, I'm a slow listener, I guess. But that's why I read about it and watched a review and listened to what you said. And then that was really all I needed to know. That I was like, okay, it wraps up. I kind of figured out where it was going to go. I assumed one of the women were going to die. Like you get halfway through, you know that he's going to eventually, especially after he kills Peter, that he's going to try to change one of them.
Yeah.
And I knew one of them probably would make it. Yeah, and it was interesting. He made some weird choices, like killing the uncle who was already dying and all these things. He just makes a lot of bad
Mhm.
choices. He's a character who's very conflicted, very very wise and very stupid all at the same time.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So yeah, no, I think it was a great story. It was written well. Can't always relate to all of it, but I think overall that we all can relate to the base themes, I guess. And it was an
Oh,
interesting
yeah, like,
take. So,
everyone's lost something or someone that's been really important to them, so
mm-hmm,
I felt the loss for sure.
100%.
And I did feel the love between the 2 of them, even if it wasn't always because love's not perfect, we know this, but, like, there was times in the novel as I read, I'm like, there's been times I felt like this about Johnny because, you just look at somebody and you're like, "I'm so thankful that you're here,"
Yeah.
it was kinda like that, like, she was thankful for him, like, throughout most of the book, but
Oh
he
yeah.
fell off his pedestal is really essentially what happened.
Quickly.
Yes, very quickly. But anyways, so we can move on to the rubric.
All right, let's get it.
All right, so character development clearly describes characters in detail, develops characters over the course of the text. Characters are well balanced and show growth or lack thereof to suit the needs of the piece.
See, I'm thinking, and this is hard because it is a 4-part book series, so I don't think all the characters are fully developed in this one book. I was thinking more in the 19 to 15 range on this because there are some that are developed, others that are introduced, and some that don't get time to fully develop, I think.
Yeah,
So I'd go with maybe like an 18, maybe, or 17.
let's do 18.
Okay.
That works. All right, so plot development. Themes are well developed and clear to the reader. Pacing of the story is timed well and doesn't feel rushed. I think she did a great job with this.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I
There was
would.
a lot of there was a lot of setup, and it needed the setup for us to really fully understand the plot
There was
development.
a lot of thought that went into it, I think, and even like I
Mhm.
said, it's the jumping around at the beginning is not off putting, but kind of throws you out of the story. But once you realize what they're doing, I think you're good. Yeah, I would go like a 22 on this one. So I think there are some issues of the pacing that you're like, what? But it definitely doesn't feel rushed. The
No,
timing's
it's not.
good, and I think the overall themes are fairly developed because it's really about love, loss, coping. It's about all those things together, and I think that's fairly well. So yeah, I think like a 22.
All right, so now we have imagery, which is just descriptive scenes, setting, and actions. So like I there was times where I felt like I was like when they went to that island, I was like, man,
Yeah.
talking about how sticky she was and like the mosquitoes and like I was like, man, Florida. I know what that feels like. So I thought the imagery was done really well
Okay. What do you think?
throughout the whole thing. So I would give her imagery a 25.
You think a full 25? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Like even from the very beginning with the Chicago, like how it was really rainy and like dark and
Yeah.
him walking down the thing. It was really good.
She
Like
did a
I
good
just
job of atmosphere, I think, for sure, and
yes, it was
descriptors.
all yeah, like I never felt like I didn't know where I was. Like I felt like I felt like I could walk through the streets of wherever he was, wherever Jessica was.
Yeah, I
So,
could feel that. I don't think she didn't do like a Stephen King thing and go over either. So I think she did a good job.
yeah.
You didn't feel like you could read house numbers or something because she was just too descriptive.
Yeah, because when they get to that extent, I check out.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of times I read young adult fiction because the imagery is there, but it's not. You don't have to give me everything. I can fill in the blanks. Styles and convention, writing and language is smooth, skillful, and coherent. Sentences are strong and expressive with varied structure and no conventional errors present. I mean, she did a really good job. So I don't know. What do you think?
This one, I mean, I'm gonna leave it to you. You're the English teacher. I definitely agree. I didn't notice there was no errors, but again, for me, I was listening to it, so like anything that might have been of a written error would usually be corrected. So it's hard to catch those. I do think the writing and language was smooth. Even things that were taking place in different eras was still very well done. It was very coherent. A lot of it, lot of very good structure. So yeah, I mean, this one would definitely be in the 20 to 25 range for me. But what do you think as an English teacher? You actually saw the
I
words on paper, so
I would give it a 25. She did a really good job. Like there wasn't like down to the dialogue and the sentence structures were all really, they were different and then she was really good about like when you switched over from points of view and you could, be in the in the mind of Kira, or you could be in the mind of David or whoever, or Mahmoud, because Mahmoud had chapters too. It switched over so well. Like she wouldn't even had to tell me who it was. Like I knew who it was.
yeah.
So I think that speaks to her writing ability. So
Mhm.
being very skillful. So I'm gonna give her a 25 on that one.
I agree. Sounds good. That leaves us
So I think
with
that's
a 90
yeah, 90%.
for My Soul to Keep by Tananarive Due. Very good.
Tananarive Due.
Tananarive, yeah, I know.
I know it's hard. It's
I
hard
said
not to want to
Rive,
say
and I
that.
knew I said it wrong.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's okay.
it's Tananarive.
Because I called her that the first time we talked about it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong,
Mhm.
and I was. So
I know. I got the Tanana part, and I was like, I just said Rive. My bad.
it's okay.
Tananarive. Yeah, great book, good story. I definitely highly suggest if you read this and like it, continue on. From what I read, the stories just get more interesting. It kind of gets a little bit more supernatural feeling after this one. I think this one's more of a good foundation, the groundwork.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out.
I really want to read them, but I need a break from the story because I was so upset
Yeah.
with the first one. So, oh, goodness. Anyways, it's good.
Yeah, definitely suggest. Highly recommended. Obviously, we gave it an A. If it was student writing, it'd be solid. There were a few little things in the character development that I think will be panned out probably in later stories. That's why it's kind of hard to really judge the starting book of a series because you're going to get more from different characters later on. But
Yeah.
just as it's a standalone book, then yeah, definitely, I think that you'll notice some of that. You'll get it later. The main characters are developed fine. The main story is brought out fine. There's a couple little slow parts, but they're little and slow on purpose. Stuff that didn't need to be there, I don't think. It was just there to add to the drama, but it was still fine.
Mm-hmm.
Things I didn't necessarily 100% agree with. I thought they were kind of silly. Like, again, his being atheist and stuff. And I hated the Brotherhood for being selfish assholes. But other than that, you were supposed to, I think. I think that was intended, based on her experiences, that the men were kind of crappy. And it took a woman to set it right, which is typically what happens in the world. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, here we go, guys. Check it out. And that will wrap up our Black History Month, which I thought was
Yes, it
pretty
will.
solid. Great
Yeah, I
story.
thought so too.
If you're into it, again, read more. And then, yeah, we should be announcing what our next month is fairly soon.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, so
I'm
stay
excited
tuned.
about the next month.
Me too. It's going to be good. All right, guys.
Oh, man.
You want to tell them where they can
Well,
find us?
yep, I sure will. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Horror in the Halls. You can also follow Jenny_Dreadfuls on Instagram. You can email us at horrorinthehalls@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, guys, reach out, leave a like, review. We can pretty much find us on all podcasting platforms at this time. We'd love to hear what you guys think of the show. So reach out, let us know. And yeah, so that's going to be the bell, guys. We're going to see you next time.
Bye.